Hello everyone, my name is George Slatkovsky, and today we are going to discuss a new minor update for GS CurveTools 1.2.4. And this is a minor update, but there are still new features that I want to discuss. And also, after the new features, we will discuss some of the issues that people are facing with Maya and CurveTools in particular, and how to possibly resolve them. So all of the timestamps for the topics that we discuss in this video will be in the description. So check it out if you want to just skip to the part that you're interested in. And yeah, enjoy. So let's look at a new update for the mirroring function. So it was introduced in version 1.2, but unfortunately the release was a little bit bumpy because, well, although it's kind of mirrored the curves, it sometimes messed the orientation of the curves, and that was really not the thing that I wanted for this function. So it was a bit rushed, but I think this new version will be much better. So let's see how it performs. So let's look at this patch of hair over here. So you, for example, start to make underlying layer of hair for this groom, and you want the same thing to be on the other side, right? So this mirroring function will work in world space only, just like a previous version, but I think that it will be much better in maintaining the orientation. So let's disable the textures for you to see better the orientation of those cards, and let's just press mirror. So we have x-axis, and let's press mirror, and as you can see, now it mirrored those cards on the other side, and those cards have a lot of functions like twist and inverted twist, and profile changed over here and profile changed over here. So as you can see, it is compatible with warp cards, and you can basically use any options you want over here. So I think it did a much better job than the previous versions. So it will still be a little bit unprecise when you, for example, use it with bound cards. For example, if you use something like a bunch of tubes like that and you bound them together, it will not calculate the orientation correctly because of the shape of this thing. So the ideal target for this new mirror is flat cards or flat clumps of cards. So let me just demonstrate. So for example, we have two types of clumps over here. This one that is some sort of a braid or twisted hair like that, and this is like just a regular card. Let me just fix the UVs because I need to transfer them from one of those cards really quickly. And let's select this and transfer UVs, and yeah, just like that. So those are flat cards, but they just arranged in a clump, and those are twisted like that. So if we bind them to a curve, just like that, and put them over here somewhere. So how do you think which clump will mirror better, this one or this one? So obviously it's the flat one, because this is the limitation of the mirror, and if I try to mirror it like that, you'll see that it kinda did an okay job at orientation, but it's still not perfect. And the reason for that is the more complex geometry you have attached to a curve, the worse it will calculate the normals, and obviously the worse the final orientation will be, but it's still much better than it was before. And you can upgrade this thing with the next feature that we'll discuss. And if we look at this orientation, for example, for this clamp, for example, right, and try to mirror it, you'll see that it doesn't really do a whole amazing job at this mirroring, because of the complex shape and a lot of polygons that are facing the different directions. It just doesn't like it at all, and it cannot calculate the correct orientation for it. And you cannot just simply duplicate this thing and inverse, for example, scale. It will just flip this geometry randomly, and it will not look not even close to this one. So as you saw in the previous mirroring function. So the mirror was upgraded for cards, the single cards. It's now a little bit better for flat clamps as well, but it's still not the best thing to do with those complex braids and stuff like that. So if you want to mirror those, you can mirror them, but you need to fix the orientation later on, and this is the current limitation, unfortunately. So the huge new feature in this update, this minor update, is orient to normals. Yeah, now you can orient your cards to the normals of the sculpt. So how does it work? It's very simple. You just select any mesh you want. For example, I want to select this body, right? And when it detects that you selected a polygon mesh, it will add this option to this curve control window, orient to normals. And if you open this one, you will see that you have select target, or you can even just type the name of your mesh over here. I will just select target and it will add this body automatically over here. And also you have some new options over here. Now, after you selected the body, you can just deselect it. You see everything just disappeared. And now what you can do is just select any cards, any number of cards, and you can go over here to orient to normal, and you can orient them to normals of the sculpt. So let's see how it works. I will just randomize this orientation of those cards. You see they are completely, let me just even maybe randomize them, right? So we have handy randomization function over here, and let's just orientation, and let's randomize the orientation a little bit. You'll see that they are completely random now. Let's randomize even more over here. Now let's try to orient them to the normals. So let's just click orient, and you will see that they are now oriented to the sculpt. And you see that some of them might not be as perfect as you want. You can just click again, and it will be oriented even better. And as you can see, the more you click, or the more iterations you will choose over here, as you can see, we have a slider for iterations, the better it will do with the orientation. So it's relatively fast. Of course, if you will try to orient like thousands and thousands of cars, it will take some time, but 10 iterations or maybe 20 iterations and let's say 200 cards, it's totally fine. If you have some performance issues in the viewport, you can disable this refresh viewport, and it will just orient them silently without updating the viewport like each 10 iterations or something. The next slider over here is minimum angle slider. And this slider will determine the tolerance of this orientation, orientation to normals, right? So this angle basically says I want the angle between this card and this normal of the sculpt to be at least 5 degrees or less, right? So it will be very close to the normal of this sculpt over here, and the normal of the card, that is something like that. And if you make it more, you'll see that it actually doesn't really care too much about the normal, because 45 degrees, it's like a very wide tolerance. And if you go a little bit closer, you'll see that you'll get even tighter results, but it can take more iterations to get to this result. So 5%, I think it's a good middle ground for the accuracy you want from hair cards. And again, if you have some performance issues, just disable the viewport refresh, and it should be much better this way. So again, you select your mesh, you type over here the name of the mesh, or you just click select body, select target, and it will actually select it as a target. You then select your cards and you click on orient, and it will orient them to the normals of that sculpt. At least it will try to do as best job as it can with this algorithm. Let's just see some other examples. For example, you have shorter hair cards over here. You might see that in much shorter hair styles like that. And if I want to orient them, I'll just select them and I will just orient them to the scalp. You'll see that it can take a little bit, but at least it's not a manual process anymore. You can just increase the like iterations a little bit, and you see that they are actually now oriented to this head. See, just like that orientation. And you can, if you just like do something like this and then orient, and you'll see that they will be oriented just like that. So very simple function, but very powerful, especially for those who actually make shorter hairstyles. I think it will be very useful for you. Now, once again, the same thing that goes for the mirror goes for orient to normal. So the more complex your mesh is, the harder it will be for this function to actually orient it to normals correctly. It's not that bad, but if we, for example, look at those previous examples with the cars that we have, so let's just duplicate a bunch of them, just like that. So we have a little bit more of a sample size, just like that, and we will also mirror them to the other side. And let's see. So if I, for example, change the orientation something like that, and then click to orient, you'll see that, yes, it actually orients them to the scalp, and it actually does quite nice job, once again, because of the shape of the cards. They are flat cards, and they are, although there are 3 or 4 of them here, they are still flat cards, and it is quite easy to calculate normals for them, the average normals, and actually match it to the scalp. But for something like this tube, you will see that although it tries to orient it, you'll see that it doesn't actually match each other too well. And if I duplicate it, for example, like that, and try to orient it again, as you can see, it kind of oriented to the scalp, but just because of the shape, it doesn't really know where the flat side, where the white side over here, and it just averages everything out and orients what it can. That's it. So this is the limitation. But for everything else, it actually works really, really well. I'm really happy with this function. If you just orient it over here, just like that, and then press orient, you'll see that it will be fixed. So I just broke all of my cars over here, and it's in one button click, I actually fixed the orientation for everything, just like that. And of course, if we enable textures, it will look awful. But, well, it's just a demonstration. So now about some of the issues that people actually experiencing with Mayas and the CurveTools in general. There are a few, so if you are already familiar with most of them, you'll see the list in the description. You can just skip this part completely, but if you are experiencing them, I will just explain some of the stuff that you can do to avoid them. So first, and the most like prevalent is the problem with the UVs, right? So the Maya 2020 and 2022 has a problem with UVs when you save and reload your project, and if you are using Maya binary file, right? So I will just save this scene as, for example, Maya binary. Just like that, I will save it, and we will see that the textures are fine, the UVs are fine. We will open our UV editor and look at them. And as you can see, everything just fine, works like a charm. And I will reload this Maya binary file, and you will see that now we have those textures kind of in a broken state, right? The UVs shows as correct, but the representation of them are not correct. So it's a problem with Maya itself. It's not a problem with CurveTools. CurveTools uses Maya nodes and functions. So if some of the parent functions are broken in some way, or nodes are broken in some way, the CurveTools will have the same issues. But this thing is thankfully very easy to fix. You just go to Options and you go to Fix Maya 2020-2022 UV bug. This bug was reported numerous times. No one wants to fix it. I don't know why, but you can just use this workaround, or you can simply save your project as Maya ASCII. So if you just save your project as Maya ASCII format, just like that, and if you go and reload Maya ASCII, don't save, you will see that everything is perfectly fine, no UV issues at all. So just use Maya ASCII, and this format is in general slower, but it's much better because you can actually go to this Maya ASCII file, it's just a text file, and you can fix some of the stuff if you know what you're doing, of course. You can fix some of the bugs with the loading of the files and actually save your scene this way. So it's actually a better way to save your scenes, slower but better way, more safer. So another issue that people sometimes experience, it's a very rare issue, but still let's cover it. It's the issue with the graphs, the twist and width graphs. So CurveTools uses this node called curve warp node, and hence the warp name over here for the cards. It uses this node to actually attach geometry to a curve, right? So if there are some problems with this node, those problems will reflect on the CurveTools as well. That's just the nature of the beast. And the issue looks like that. You go to your width curve graph, for example, right? You save your, let's just see, you do something like this, and this, I'll just replicate this issue real quickly. That's the only way I know to replicate it in first try. You do something like this, right? The curve is fine. You go save scene, recent files, and reload this scene. And what it will do is it seemingly disappeared, right? The cards just disappeared. Nothing is here. Like, what is this, right? You can just go, you cannot just use it anymore. It's seemingly broken, right? It's not broken, it's just the issue with the graph. And this graph actually reflects the native graph that curve warp node uses. And if there are issues with this graph, it will be the same here. This is a very rare issue, but now in this new version, you can actually fix it really quickly. You just open your options again and fix broken graphs. And that's it. You'll see that the broken graphs are now fixed. And if you now save and reload this graph, this one over here, you'll see now it will not be breaking like that. It can still happen sometimes with the graphs if you use some weird positions for the nodes, right? So this is totally fine. But if you do something like this, right, it can sometimes break. So reset curve will also work for this fix broken graphs thing, but you don't want really to reset your graph like that, because it will just zero everything out. And maybe you have some kind of very interesting configuration here. You can just fix broken graphs like that, and it will not touch any non-broken graphs. Just for you to know that this issue can be fixed if you notice that your graph doesn't work like it's intended. Or you can just simply reset the graph, reset the curve, and it will just reset it to defaults, and you can set it up again like you want, right? So two options: reset completely or try to fix them. So this is another thing. So another minor issue that people experience with CurveTools and sometimes with Maya as well, if they use curve warp, is the flipping of the orientation of the card, right? So you have this card over here, right? And you can try to go over the axis or the y-axis like that, and you will see at some point orientation will start to flip around, and now it's kind of in a different orientation than it was before. Well, it's native to Maya itself, native to curve warp node And it cannot be fixed because Curve Warp Node is a compiled plugin from C++, and it means that I cannot go inside and I cannot do anything with it. And there are no options in Maya other than Curve Warp at the moment. So we just need to be mindful of this issue, that if you do drastic orientation changes over here, you kind of need to adjust your orientation manually. This is the unfortunate limitation, but well, it is what it is, right? But with, for example, extrude cards, if I can see the extrude card over here, it was in a hidden layer. With extrude cards, there are no such issues. As you can see, they are completely stable when you rotate them. But the issue with with extrude cards is that they have limited functionality over here. So, for example, compare warp cards, and we have twist, we have width graph, we have profile, change in each point of the graph of the card like that, and we have nothing like that in the extrude, right? So we have just width and twist and taper, and that's basically it. Profile, taper, and stuff like that. So this is a limitation of warp cards, but with great options comes great limitations, let's just say like that. And there's really no workaround for this. You just need to understand that this issue exists, and just need to be mindful of it when you actually plan your cards. And I think it will be a bit better with this orient to normals function, and mirroring is a little bit better with it as well. But this is, by the way, the main issue why mirroring was not as good before this update. So yeah. Now another minor issue that is connected to the previous one is the flipping of orientation of the curve. If you tried to move this second CV, if your card is oriented, so it was originally something like that, right? And it is now oriented to this. As you can see, it actually flips a little bit as well. So if you go ahead and select this second CV and you start to move it around, you'll see that actually not as stable as you would like. It actually tries to rotate a little bit, and the reason for this is that there is quite a bit of rotation to this curve. So if we zero up the rotation like that, as you can see, there's almost no problem over here. Look at this. No flipping of the orientation at all. And that's why I generally recommend to avoid these rotations over here. Although they can be used, just try to not exceed like 90 degrees. It's not a huge issue, just for you to know that these rotations over here, the normal Maya rotations of the curves, they can cause this issue a little bit. And in order to avoid this, just try using the orientation that you have in the CurveTools itself. So let's just see. Let's just put it, for example, something like that, right? Something like that. Right, and we can even do something like this. As you can see, first of all, it actually made the orientation correct already. But if it wasn't for some reason, and you see 0 rotations over here, but I actually have correct orientation over here. But if you, for example, do something like this on the back of the head, don't do this. At least try not to do this, to rotate it like that. You can, but just know that it can cause some issues. Just do something like this. Just do something like this, right? And then fix the orientation over here. Of course, I need to fix this over here as well. As you can see, it will be much stable, no flipping of orientation or anything. So try to use this orientation as much as possible. and try not to use this rotation as much as possible. Again, small rotations, totally fine, nothing will happen. 45 degrees, 50 degrees, 60 degrees, it's fine. If you start to go 90 degrees and more, it can start to behave a little bit weirdly. But again, it's not always it does this, not on all axes. So just know about this issue. Now, the third orientation issue with the cards that you might encounter is connected to control curves and warp cards. So it's the same old issue that I discussed the previous two times. It's all connected to the incorrect calculation of normals for the warp cards. That's just my issue. There's nothing I can do. But if you actually apply control curve, you'll see that we have now this single curve that you can use as a deformer for your selected cards. If you apply this thing, and as you can see, it works perfectly fine. It actually deforms as you might expect, just like that. But now, if you try to rotate this thing drastically, you see, if I cross the axis, you'll see, I don't know if you can see this correctly, but you'll see that the underlying cards actually rotate as well, just like that. If you cross the the y-axis like that, see, it actually rotates them. Now, you must remember that this control curve is just a small deformer. It's used for small deformations. It's just like a simple, very simple thing that you can use to, for example, make a small change like that, right? So I would consider this a very small change and then apply, and that's it. And then again, control curve. If you want to actually control a bunch of cards, control curve like that. Small change, right? Adjust it, and then apply it. You do not use control curve to actually change a whole lot of cards, change the orientation, change, like, I don't know, something crazy. If you want more control, if you want stable orientation, well, much stable than this control curve will provide, you actually use bind, and you create clumps, and you orient them on your scalp, and you'll have a bunch of options over here, additional options that you'll use. Don't use control curve for complex operations. So small deformations is the best thing that a control curve can provide. Just a note. Now, another issue that people experience sometimes with CurveTools is some weird leftover cards, as I call them, in the center of the world, just like that, over there somewhere, right? And let's see why it happens. So the reason for this is very, very simple. You tried to delete the card, but you only deleted the path curve, the thing that you are selecting, right? But there are actually more components to the card than just the path curve that you select. And if you delete only the path curve, you will have what I call the leftover cards over there in the middle of the world. And let me just demonstrate. So I delete only the path curve, right? So it seems like I've deleted it, right? So there's nothing here. Nice, I've deleted just like I wanted. But the issue here is that you have now those things over here, those unselectable cards that seemingly broken, nothing can be done with them. You can, of course, enable geometry edit on those layers and simply delete them manually. But the issue is that you will still have those groups over here. And how to fix that? It's actually very, very simple. When you delete your card, press up on your keyboard, just up arrow, like that, and you will see that it actually selects the entire group, just like that. See, it selects the entire group, and now you can delete it, right? And now, as you can see, nothing is left behind. You deleted the card completely, It will cause no issues. It is deleted from the layers and everything is basically fine. So just remember that if you delete the path curve itself, you'll see that it actually disappeared, right? But it will be over there and it will be in a broken state. This is not ideal, so just select the path curve like that, press up and delete. It works for every single type of card and actually bound cards as well. Just up and delete, and that's it. So this will be it for those issues and solutions for CurveTools and Maya in particular, and for this new update as well. Try this new Orient to Normals feature. I hope you'll really like it. If there are any issues or suggestions, you can just join my Discord server. Link will be in the descriptions. Also, all of the timestamps and other links are there as well. Also, leave a comment on this video, of course. And thank you for watching. See you next time.